Do you want to touch my hair? No. But let's turn around. And shake your butt. Shake them, shake them, shake them, shake them, shake them.
As parents, most of us take every precaution available to protect our kids. You're going in a car ride, you make sure the car seat straps are tight. You're on a walk and you see a dog your kid wants to pet, well, you make sure the dog is friendly and sociable and the owner is cool with it before letting your kid go pet that dog. But for trendy, cool, hip, awesome liberal parents with all the right opinions, it seems this self-preservation instinct, this instinct that compels you to defend your child's well-being, goes right out the window as soon as there is an opportunity to socially signal how tolerant and progressive and accepting you are. Imagine liberal parents boycotting car seats because they were invented by a white man, or having pit bull toddler immersion parties to prove that there is one breed, the dog breed, and despite being responsible for a vastly disproportionate amount of dog bites, pit bulls are no different from or no more dangerous than your friendly neighborhood golden retriever or Labrador. That would be seen, rightly, as child endangerment, which brings us to today's topic. Right now, across the country, every weekend, parents are gathering their children together at schools and public libraries to engage in some pretty weird, likely damaging, and objectively dangerous behavior. You've seen the memes by now. The person dressed as a literal demon reading to small children in a local library. But you may not have known that these events, known as drag queen story hours, are not one-off things that happen every now and then. They're happening across the country every single weekend. The event is pretty much what you would expect. Liberal mothers, and yes, some soy-faced fathers, gather their very young children together and take them to listen to biological males dressed as provocative women to read children's stories that deconstruct gender and whiteness and challenge preconceived notions. According to the school library journal, slj.com, popular books include I Am Jazz, the story of Jazz Jennings, a child that was subjected to hormone conversion by their parents. Other stories include Feminist Baby by Lauren Brantz, My First Book of Feminism for Boys by Julie Merberg, and another story called Elsa Marie and Her 7 Little Daddies. That last book, written by a woman named Pija Lindenbaum, is the story of a little girl who has 7 dads instead of 1, and she's worried about how the other kids will react when she finds out that her parents, instead of being a man and a woman, a mother and a father, are instead 7 dudes that presumably, well, you know. The United States is like an artfully spray-painted Volkswagen Beetle, and just when you thought it couldn't get any clownier, another clown spills out of the backseat, in perpetuity. Little young kids being read stories designed to deconstruct gender and create as much gender confusion and dysphoria in their malleable little minds. What could go wrong? You could expect the gender dysphoria, uncomfortable questions, and sheer confusion that many of these kids experience at events like this. They haven't been subjected to political correctness training yet. They don't really have a filter. And so you can look at their faces in the photos taken at these events and see that their reaction is along the lines of, what the heck am I doing here? That's all well and good. Actually, it's sick and twisted, but we are now learning that Drag Queen Story Hour actually has a bit of a darker underbelly than previously thought. It was taped back, tucked away so you couldn't see it, but the tape has fallen off and now it's swinging freely for all of us to see. Imagine your shock when you find out that some of the volunteers for these events, some of the drag queens are, drumroll please, convicted child predators. I assume that you were deeply surprised and shocked. I mean, who could have possibly seen that coming? Today we'll be looking at Drag Queen Story Hour and how it should not be a thing. We'll look at the liberal parents subjecting their kids to this gender dysphoric and anti-white propaganda. We'll look at the stories themselves, talk about the several predators that have been caught working at these events, and we'll look at the heroic protest response as well. We'll be looking at Drag Queen Story Hour. It's not quite what it presents itself as. Who could have seen that? And we'll conclude with my theories on why liberal parents are so drawn to virtue signaling events like this. That and more ahead in today's video, but first, your chance to own a piece of American history. Back at the turn of the century, the Morgan silver dollar was the way everything was paid for. For over 25 years, this coin was the $10 bill of its day. This coin I'm holding right here was minted in 1884. It likely changed hands hundreds, if not thousands of times in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These are pieces of American history, and right now, you have the opportunity to get your hands on one just like this. Now you can choose from a carefully selected range of turn-of-the-century coins for every budget and level of interest, from beginner to seasoned expert. Go to historicsilvercoins.com and use the code JAMES for a discount of $5 off per coin while supplies last. historicsilvercoins.com. As with every social ill, Drag Queen Story Hour did not simply manifest out of the ether. Would you like to take a guess where this awful phenomenon began? The name of the city begins with San. They're not famous for their sparkling water, they're not located in Puerto Rico, and they don't have a major professional sports franchise named after the Spanish word for father. If you guessed the teeming toilet city of San Francisco, you would be right, as that is where Miss Michelle T birthed this abomination of a program. Now, as noted in the introduction, there are quite a few local chapters too, and DQSH events almost every week across the country. These events feature a drag queen, which is a man dressed as a hypersexualized woman, reading stories, usually about gender politics, to children, young children too. What could go wrong? LifeSite News, quote, Houston, Texas, March 19th, 2019. A pro-family activist group has uncovered the truth about the pedophile past of a drag queen who reads to young children at a public library's drag queen story time. 32-year-old Albert Garza is a registered sex offender who was convicted of assaulting an 8-year-old boy in 2008. Yet that has not hindered him from dressing in garish women's clothing, calling himself Tatiana Malanina, and performing in front of kids.
Let's turn around. And shake your butt. Shake 'em, shake 'em, shake 'em, shake 'em, shake 'em.
Well, you know, I'm a tolerant liberal, so I don't see the problem with having a convicted child molester go and do these performances where kids are offered to touch them and put their hands on them. Nothing wrong with that, because I'm tolerant. Honk, honk. Let me get this straight. Get accused by the media or SPLC of being a racist online, and you'll get doxxed, fired, become unemployable, get your bank account shut down, your life is over. But if you like to dress up as a woman and sexually assault children, you are welcomed back into the fold with open arms and given opportunities to continue to victimize kids. The United States is not a serious country. We're a shambling, Walking Dead, necrosis, limbs falling off, decay, corpse of one. And anybody else find it a little bit odd that this drag queen's name, again, this drag queen who was convicted of molesting a child, has the Spanish word for small female child in their performance name, Nina? Anybody else think that's a little bit odd? Hold on a minute, the big brain centrists in the comments will say, this is just an isolated incident, and you're just being a radical right-wing alarmist. Well, PJmedia.com, quote, second child sex offender unmasked at drag queen story time. On Thursday, activist parents with mass resistance unmasked another child sex offender who greeted children at drag queen story time. According to local mass resistance leader Tracy Shannon, a drag performer with many aliases has sexually assaulted children and publicly recounted his history as a transgender dominatrix and prostitute for hire. His name has been redacted here because he was allegedly convicted for sexual assault against children at age 16, so his court record was sealed. Shannon sent PJ Media the research document outlining how mass resistance uncovered this second alleged sex offender. She connected the man to an article at About Online, recalling experiences in sex work as a professional dominatrix. At the beginning, the anonymous author admitted, I had tried for so many years to alleviate my depression and dysphoria through random sex. I had lost track of how many partners I've had. This eased the transition from sex work to becoming a transgender prostitute and porn actor. Just the kind of person you'd want around your kids. In Houston, Texas, at least 2 of the performers working with children at Drag Queen Story Hour are convicted sex criminals. This is only known thanks to the work of Mass Resistance, a pro-family activist group which investigated the Houston drag queen events and found this information. We don't know how many other DQSH performers across the country have been convicted for child sex abuse. It could be 0. Of course, it could be 0, and Elizabeth Warren could win the presidency in 2020. Groups like the SPLC, Media Matters, ProPublica, and others all have massive endowments totaling somewhere in the billions of dollars. These groups could spend their money hiring researchers to keep children safe. These groups could spend money to keep children safe, to keep convicted sex criminals away from kids at Drag Queen Story Hour events, to expose convicted sex criminals. Instead, what do? They don't protect the civil rights of children from being victimized. No, the SPLC and ProPublica investigate and expose guys who win fistfights with Antifa after being attacked, or investigate people that run edgy podcasts. These million-dollar, sometimes billion-dollar organizations don't do a thing to protect children or the civil rights of children. They leave that work for small, grassroots organizations like Mass Resistance. In fact, the SPLC cries hatred and bigotry when parents organize collectively to protect their children children and community. If you stand up and say, hey, I don't want a man dressed up as a hypersexualized woman reading to the children in my community, reading to my kids, they'll put you on the hate watch list. They've actually done that. Let's say you look past the fact that a disproportionate amount of these drag queen performers are convicted sex criminals. Hashtag not all drag queens, right? Okay, how about the books that your kids are going to be read at these cheerful little events? If Elsa and her 7 daddies that behave like the hot, hard cowboys of Ram Ranch wasn't enough for you, let's try some others. Because I am not a preeminent expert on youth LGBT literature, I'll be referring to books from the school library journal list and others that have been read at these events. Why would anyone want to deprive their child the opportunity to listen to Not My Idea, a book about whiteness and ordinary terrible things? This one's a real gem. According to School Library Journal, it's a much-needed title that provides a strong foundation for critical discussions of white people and racism, especially for young audiences. Recommended for all collections. All collections, including my bonfire. Ah, yes, those specimens that are white people, to be discussed as you would any other affliction. Perhaps you would prefer A Family is a Family is a Family, recommended for drag queen story hours by the Brooklyn Public Library. When a teacher asked the children in her class to think about what makes their family special, the answers are all different in many ways, but the same in the one that matters the most for all. One child is worried that her family is just too different to explain, but listens as their classmates talk about what makes their family special. One is raised by a grandmother, and another has 2 dads. One is full of step-siblings, and another has a new baby. As one by one, her classmates describe who they live with and who loves them, families of every shape, size, and every kind of relation, the child realizes that as long as her family is full of caring people, her family is special. You see, kid, there is no normal. There is no standard you should aspire to. There is no healthy standard that has been the bedrock of Western families for hundreds, if not thousands of years. None of that is real. Everybody can be a family, no matter what their relation, gender, or anything else, as long as they live together and love each other. Elsa and her 7 daddies that enjoy each other's company are just as valid as you and your boring nuclear family there, little Billy. That's right, kid. Every family is equal and exactly the same, whether or not you have 2 nuclear family parents or a 7-daddy disease-swapping commune. What is causing liberal parents, or usually liberal single moms, to rush to these events, children in tow? What's driving the demand here? Well, one thing is clear, the demand is not coming from the kids. Kids are not begging their parents to please let them go to Drag Story Hour. Just look at the faces of the kids at these things. They're mortified, and they don't understand. And that's because they're kids, and they're seeing what is clearly a man in woman's clothing, and that's unnerving to them. It creates cognitive dissonance. As with child gender conversion, this is almost always motivated by the parents. But why? What is motivating them? I think that most people at these events don't really understand why they're there. These are the impressionable normie types, people who are all in on consumerism, pop media, and the latest messaging coming to them from the Hollywood elites. They have seen that drag queens, drag kids, and gender dysphoria are the new thing. They've seen the viral shared Facebook videos. They don't really think about their actions, generally speaking, and going to a drag queen story event is just another cool thing for them to do. Then there are the people of slightly higher caliber, liberals that understand and engage metapolitically with the world around them. These people are drawn to drag queen story events because it gives them the opportunity to broaden their child's horizons, make them more tolerant, and expose them to new things. As good liberals, diversity and equality are the values to be strived for, so it's important to expose your children as much as possible to as many sexual, racial, ethnic, and gender minorities as you can, at all times. It also gives you the opportunity, as the parent, to take the photo of you and your kid and the drag queen. You can post that on Facebook and show how liberal and progressive and tolerant you are that you dressed your 4-year-old up in a rainbow shirt and took them to get read a story about deconstructing whiteness by a man dressed as a woman. And some liberals have a more warped but realistic view. They see that in Clown Country, USA, the ticket to social power is by becoming a minority of some kind, sexual, racial, or otherwise, by exposing their children to gender deconstructing propaganda, encouraging gender dysphoria, and steeping their kids in anti-whiteness. Many liberals hope they can create a next generation of white liberals even more hyper-liberal than themselves. Drag Queen Story Hour exists to attack the very foundations of American society and family life. Their goal, as we see from their own books, is to normalize hyper-promiscuity and deconstruct the healthy goal of the 2-parent nuclear family. Their other curriculum, which traffics in anti-white hatred and gender confusion, is propaganda propaganda designed to teach white kids and all little boys that there is something wrong with them. Something about them is intrinsically toxic and can only be atoned for through self-hatred, self-destruction, or even self-mutilation. All of that by itself would be enough to condemn these events, but that little pedophile problem they're having, that's even more confirmation. Drag Queen Story Hour, the program designed to bring small children in close contact with men dressed as hypersexualized women to read them stories undermining gender, undermining the family, and instill in them anti-white, anti-male sentiments, should not be a thing. Any parent participating in this should be ashamed. I fully encourage and support the protesters standing up to reject these events in their communities. This is excellent activism and should be pursued more frequently. If something like this is happening locally, you may want to look around and see if there are any legal, First Amendment protected protest actions in the works. While the ideological, hard leftist parents are going to find ways to mess up their kids and expose them to things they shouldn't be exposed to, that doesn't mean we have to be okay with them doing it in public spaces, using public funding. And again, this isn't the kids' choice. The kids deserve better than this, and they clearly don't want to be there. A drag queen story hour that is successfully and legally protested may very well prevent a child from falling for anti-family, anti-white, anti-male propaganda. And given the history of sexual abuse from many of these drag performers, you may be saving a child from God knows what else. DQSH should not be a thing, and anyone should be able to look at that demon reading photo and see this is not right. Thanks for everybody watching the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Agree, disagree? Am I a hypocrite on free speech? Let me know down below. See you all next time.